So let me just ask this question. What do you use to stick something to a bulletin board?
A pen.
What do you write with?
A pen.
Welcome to Critical Café,
Join us as we chat about the latest episode,
the campaign as a whole, and Critical Role in general.
all while we partake in a delicious cup of coffee. So grab yourself a tasty beverage
Settle into your favorite cozy spot.
and get ready for a little geek philosophy. Welcome to this edition of Critical Cafe, where we're going to talk about Campaign 3 of Critical Role, Episode 36. My name's Brian. This is Crystal. We're just going to get right into it. So here we go. So first half, pretty amazing. Like they're jumping into Whitestone through the tree portal that is kind of well known from Keyleth. And so why don't you kick us off? Kind of get us started with what happened at the beginning here.
Well, I mean, we're in Whitestone, last one ended off, and they could see over the city or into the city through the sun tree. They did know as they were coming out, they did ask, and it was they were coming through the sun tree. So that was pretty cool. And right away, Keyleth just says, well, I need to take you to somebody who can help. So she starts leading them up to the castle. Super nostalgic, like everybody is, again, they're seeing this for the first time as characters, but not as the actors. So, I think it's really, it's very surreal for them. So
Totally. And what's interesting too is like you can watch them as players and you can see on their face that they're waiting for it. And it's like, that Matt is going to have to be some of their characters. They don't know who they're going to meet yet. They have a feeling, but they don't know for sure. So far he's only been Keyleth, and then, that's the beginning here. And then on the way to the castle, there's a little bit of chit chat going on, right? And then I remember from a game mechanic perspective, I don't know what the spell was, but I think we were talking about it, and pretty important because I was like, and this is something I think we were watching Four-Sided Dive, and it came up, and it kind of hit me when I think Travis brought it up, and it's like, man, feeling bad for Orem right now, who lost his partner or his husband, and couldn't bring him back, but now he's going back to where all that stuff happened, and then asking for them to help with Laudna. Right. So it didn't hit me as much, but then it reminded me that they couldn't bring him back because of some type of poison. So I remember you saying that like that's what she was doing, was like Keyleth was trying to help figure out if that was going on, right? Like they trying to figure out whether or not Laudna had the same issue.
Yeah, I think it was really great that you can tell that the characters, not the characters so much, but the group has been playing together for as long as they have, because they know to think about the little things that would matter, that maybe if you were just straight into a game with people who aren't your friends, you wouldn't necessarily worry about. And maybe it was Chetney, like you were saying. I know he brought it up a time or two, and I know that Fresh Cut Grass also did. Just asking Orem how he was going to feel, because they couldn't bring his family back, and yet we were going to go and try to get Laudna to come, to get her resurrected, or whatever the spell would be, to bring her back to who she was and how she was. So, and then so I think Keyleth kind of solved a mystery for us, because, they were not able to revive Orem's family, and she then said it was because there was a poison used on the weapons. And so she did, I think she kind of leaned down, and they pulled the cloth back to check on Laudna, and she ran just to check to see if that poison had been used on her, and it hadn't.
Yeah.
So
it's probably a detect poison spell, something simple like that, but like makes from a game mechanic perspective. But I love, that's a great point you bring up. Like, I think sometimes people focus on the theatrics and like how awesome production value Critical Role is, and like try to mimic that stuff, which is great, and do that if you can, if you'd like it. But I think the biggest thing that you just said that is a great takeaway is the fact that they've been playing for a while and they thought of each other's characters and their backstories and connection as if they're thinking of friends and people and like how they would feel. And I think that's something every group can learn from. Like just if you haven't been doing that already, just kind of being considerate of what the other character's backstory is. Sometimes you get so focused on what you're trying to do with your character that you don't always remember like how you can bring the other stories to life by just being considerate of it and thinking about it. So yeah.
Well, and I think that that's not something that especially newer players might pick up on, or that sometimes older players who are really, like you're saying, one track mind, you're thinking, okay, my character and what my character needs to do. But really, when it's all said and done, if you're honestly role playing and thinking about these characters from, I'm going to use the word humanity, but from that type of perspective, then they would be concerned with that. They
Absolutely. Everyone
would be worried. Okay, all right, we're going to go do all this special stuff for Laudna, but we didn't do that for or maybe this wasn't done for your family. So I think it made it real. That moment where it was like, oh, okay, this is why, and let's check and see if she is has the same poison. But then also I think him having had the dreamscape and seeing his husband and his husband saying, you have more to do, go back.
Yeah.
I think
it was sort of giving him permission to like go back and continue. Yeah. So anyway, so they 100% on board with that. And then they're moving towards the castle, right? So that was it was so, I don't know. It was really interesting. I was trying to figure out like how it was all going to play out. And in the back of my head, and now you two, like we kept looking at each other like they didn't say anything about Delilah as patron yet. They didn't.
I know.
Say it. Like
the
every
whole
time. Like, a little bit. We're like, when are they going to say something? So anyway, so they get through. They're in the castle. The description, I won't waste everybody's time trying to re-describe Matt's great descriptions, but like the description of things, one thing I do think is awesome is as they're journeying through and they know that they're going to go see Percy. I think it was Orem because of his perception. It could have been Chetney, one of the two, catch like a glimpse of something. Like somebody either watching or something. They don't know who it was. Yep. And, then they get up to go in. And right before they go in the door, that's when like all the stuff comes out with Keyleth. Like they're like trying to, because she has to go, right? Yeah. So they start like whatever they can do, try to convince her about what's going on and letting her know about just like, Ruidus and everything else. It's really interesting. Like the same thing that happens with every other D&D group happened to them, where they're like, no, here's an important person, we've got to info dump and we've got to let them know what's going on. It happens to every PC group.
The world or the continent or whatever is trying to get ready for the apogee solstice, and Keyleth is trying to thwart wizards trying to do crazy stuff to ascend to godhood, and like cults doing certain things to, using that timing as a magical time of the year with the ley lines and whatnot all lining up. And so you can tell like she got contacted again by somebody and she's like, oh, nope, I'm coming back. I'm on my way. And so then the group is like, but hold on, we have so much to tell you, so she's like, we'll talk later. And the group's like, but we don't know if later is okay. I mean, there's so much going on. Do we really know if what is happening on Ruidus is going to happen around like it? I feel like they need a strong time, a lot of power, a lot of magic. So it's got to all be happening around the apogee solstice. And so,
and it like also reinforces that like there is a world, and like while things are happening with your characters, there are still things happening around the world. And I love that like it kind of reinforces that you're the center of your story as the players, but there are other stories happening in the campaign world, and that makes the world feel more real, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
There are other consequences happening elsewhere that are big, that we also have to work on. It's not just what's happening with your group and what your group is trying to thwart. That's not the only thing that's happening in the world. So I think Matt did a really great job of portraying that, especially with how he spoke as Keyleth and portrayed the character herself. Like, you could tell, like, she's stressed. She's like pulling her hair out, and she's like, she gotta go. So she introduces them to Percy, and she leaves.
And she,
like, just dumps them there.
Props to Matt being able to pull off all of Percy's names. Like, I'm sure he was reading because you have to, but like,
I can't remember them all.
Yeah,
it's thank goodness
awesome.
He goes by Percy.
Yeah,
because otherwise,
or Lord
Dorolo.
Yeah. But and I like that they aged him, right? Like he's got the cane. He's like, it kind of sinks in that everybody in Vox Machina was some other species other than human besides him. And so, like, that's something that we haven't really got a chance to see the effects of yet. Like, everybody ages slower, and he doesn't. He ages at a normal human rate. So, like, what does that mean for, like, him and Vex in the future? Like, I don't know. It just makes you think about some things. So he's basically still in power. He's taken aback by like some of the comments that are made about, like, I know Chetney has a good like call for like the craftsmanship of things, and there's a whole back and forth with them that was really fun. Yeah. Well,
and finding him in his study, and he's got all of these like things around him. He's still inventing, but I think I can't remember which which person said something, but it was one of those things where you're seeing, okay, he's not just making weapons anymore, he's making things of beauty. He's using his artificer or his background to make like the clock tower and all of these things that come to life, because Matt describes things so well. So sure. I think that was really important to see too, because he's not still just completely like hell-bent on revenge or, like still angry as much.
And he's a dad now, and they got to see his, like, the person that was actually shadowing the group was his daughter. And like, so you get to see a little bit of all this stuff that we knew was there based on what was written, but like seeing it come to life was really kind of cool. So
So Gwendolyn, little tiefling girl. So apparently they had a set of twins who were older, that we get introduced to a little bit further on, and then they also have a little tiefling daughter named Gwendolyn, and we kind of see her a little bit more. She's young. I mean, I think with how Matt was portraying her, maybe 6, 7-ish, if that old, maybe 5,
maybe around 10. I think.
Really?
Yeah, I think she was. I think I actually remember him saying 10. I could be wrong.
Oh, so I probably am wrong. You're probably right.
I think I remember him saying around what age it was, but even her being 10, she was really smart and like being able to dive into some of the books and stuff there.
She was reading a medical book, like.
Yeah, go figure, right? So
yeah, well, her mom and her dad.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they try to give Percy information, but they still somehow don't manage to mention Delilah.
I think purposely, like from a player perspective, probably purposely. And also maybe smart way to go because Orem knows more of that history. Yeah. Like maybe that's, I don't know. But I'm still like, just like you, I'm like, are you going to say something? What's going to happen here? And, yeah.
Well, and I think because as Keyleth was leaving, she looked at him and she said, per the, voice of the Tempest, we want to help them. We are going to help them with whatever they need.
Yeah.
And, I think that kind of chafed against him a little bit, especially once he started figuring out what it was that they wanted. Because at first, I think he believed they were bringing Laudna back to bury her or to inter her in her homeland or her home city. And really, they were like, no, we're bringing her back to bring her back.
Yeah.
She's not getting buried, or, we're not having a funeral.
Yeah.
So, and he really kind of pushed against that. He was like, what makes you think that you're special?
Right.
That you can bring people back? Again, hitting home that it's not normal, like happenstance for someone to have that magic, how expensive it is on top of if somebody does, and then also that there are consequences in the world, when you do mess with the natural order of things. But I think we can all know and understand, and he didn't, that Laudna's not really natural, so it's already been messed with her. Yeah.
And it's really interesting too, like, that I was it that at that point that he calls for Pike, or is that point where Vexalia comes down? I can't remember the order of that, but
he already called. He called for Pike.
That's right. After they decided, okay, we're gonna see if it's
right.
Yeah.
And then they decided to, I think, head out and down. So they were heading downstairs, and then Vex came in with the other two, I think, like teenage kids.
Yep.
Which, I mean, Matt didn't say that they were twins, but he said they were around the same age. So I think that they're twins, if I remember correctly from what I read. A boy and a girl, So that's when she comes in, and, she's like the softness to Percy's stern, hard, outer shell of, this is not something we should be doing. I don't really think that we should do it, but I know that, you were told we would help you, so I'm going to see type attitude. So she was really, I think, she had so much compassion, especially once she figured out, like they talked to her a little bit and she figured out who Laudna was. She like sat down and put Laudna's head in her lap.
Yep. And I think it was, the fact that, they felt responsible for Laudna dying on the Sun Tree to begin with, was a big thing. And then we've got Percy show up, who she's great, and she's a baker and all these other things that
Pike.
I'm sorry, or not Percy, Pike. You're right. I said
Pike.
So said Pike. So or said Percy, but so Pike shows up, and so she's a baker, and that's kind of what they're seeing her as, but they know that there's something more. And what's really funny is that FCG's comment is like, bakers can do this, like the comic relief section was really nice.
I know, he's like, well, you can bring people back to life and you're a baker? Like, are your ingredients in your bakery?
I need to
with
learn
your
how to
bread
bake.
Ingredients? That was funny.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
He's like, well, and then the gods. Wait, hold on.
Wait, you actually
what do you mean?
Yeah.
You know gods? So yes, very good humor moments in the intermixed with the heaviness of stuff. So.
And as usual, luckily Matt has played Pike many times before whenever Ashley had to go and when he was filling in and having to be Pike from time to time. So he was used to that. But what's really funny is they start the whole process. I think this is when Vex goes upstairs for a little while and they come back. I can't remember exactly when the attempt started, but I do know that Pike started doing all the thing, and then while that's happening and the spell's beginning, she realizes it's not one soul, there are two souls, and it really comes out at that point, Delilah, and Percy is not having any of that. So we had this big theory about her possibly being a phylactery. It hasn't really been confirmed yet, but it's still in the realm of this is the way things are. We'll know more as things progress. But the fact that there's two commingled souls or two souls that are fighting to come back still kind of fits for me. And I completely get why Percy doesn't want it to happen. I completely understand why, but I thought what was really interesting is, when he says that this is, having to save someone else's soul, and Orem basically says respectfully, didn't they do that for you? Didn't your friends do that for you? And like, it was hard for him to like, refute that. That happened to him too. So it's like, it's a very interesting dynamic of how this is all going. But the fact that they noticed it in that moment, to me, was really kind of a good way of sort of showing the importance of what's going on in not only just with bringing Laudna back, but also showing the effect that it has on everybody else outside of their group.
Right.
Like the fact that it's like, it has ripple effect. Like if for some thing goes wrong and it's Delilah that comes back, or something goes astray, that this is bad for everybody, not just Laudna, not just for their group, but the larger world. So it's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So at one point, all three of them were downstairs, kind of in the foyer area. They kind of pushed everything back and laid Laudna down and gathered up the materials, the diamonds and whatnot. And Vex made a point of saying, they were going to pay for all of that, because again, they do feel guilty. And so all three of them are there. So props to Matt. Like, he's playing Percy, Vex, and Pike all at the same time, convincingly. And the minute that, Pike reaches out and searches for Laudna's soul, she realizes they're intertwined, her and Delilah. And, that was... Percy was just like, no!
Yeah, I know, right?
No. He's like, done. Not happening. The end. Bye. So, oh, man, it got tense.
It is very tense. And I think that's where they break. They went to break, right? Like, they basically had this big moment and then took a break. So let's get into what happens after the break.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so they had that big reveal / non-reveal of Laudna, and they've got to figure out what are they going to do next. So, what do they do? What's going on with this point forward?
So I think right around that time too, one of the, I'm trying to remember, like, between the two rituals. FCG has always wondered if he actually had a soul. He's always said he hasn't had one, They
do that once they get back to Pike's place. So they head out. Oh,
Pike's place.
Before... Yeah, Pike's place. So when they go to Pike's house, or to the bakery / Pike's... I know it's Pike's house. And they go there, but interestingly enough, Ashton stays back. Because Ashton is not... feeling this whole thing with Percy, which is just funny to me. Like, it's just crazy that it's Taliesin that has the biggest issue with his own character. And so they have a whole big kind of confrontation,
Yeah. I mean, Ashton was just like, this is happening. I don't care if you like it or not, type thing.
Basically, yeah.
And he's like, Percy kind of, he comes across to them like he's lost everything. He's, he had such a rough life type thing. And Ashton's like, I have too, and this is happening, Like, he's like, I don't care. I don't care what you say.
Yeah. It's really interesting, like, seeing, like, I bet it's kind of cathartic too, that, like, he gets to yell at his own character and, like, have an argument with his own character, like, in this other way, So,
well, and I think it's, they're total opposites. I think that Percy is, very fastidious, and he's very, like, like, well thought out OCD. He is constantly, like, stressed about things, and then I think Ashton is just like, F everything, F it, like, let's hit it with the hammer. Like, let's not think about it. Let's just go hit it. So
it's very true. I mean, to the point where, like, once he finally does leave and he starts following where they're going, he even takes a minute to stop and talk to the bears. So, like,
he's like
what's with that guy? And if you get a chance, go take care of that guy. Like
they're growling at him, and he's like, "Oh, bears, let me go say hello."
Yeah, it was ridiculous. It's funny, but so then they finally get back to Pikes, and then exactly what you're saying, like as they're going through all this stuff, and various discussions start happening about like the possibilities. The whole concept of what are they going to do sort of pops up, and Pike has an idea of them basically doing this, for lack of a better term, it's sort of a astral projection type of thing, kind of similar to what Pike ended up having to do, but this is more of they're going to see if they can find Laudna and right. start bringing her back, right, and detach the two of them, Laudna and Delilah, just making sure that they right. can split them. But that begs the question of, okay, if we're going to have our souls go do that, then FCG's like, well, I'll just stay here because I don't have one. And to your point, that's when they start going, wait a minute, I think you do. And it's
they take a moment to bet.
Yeah, they bet on it, and then
Imogen's like, I'm not betting. Yeah, and then the rest of them are like, I put 5 gold.
Yeah, I'll put 5 on that. And so like Pike does some sort of ritual, some sort of spell to go look, and sure enough, there his soul is, right? Like it's it's sort of like it reminded me of a little bit of Star Trek: The Next Generation and Data. Except that, like, FCG has, like, outwardly, emotional type stuff where Data was very reserved and stoic. But, like, the whole time, Data's searching to be a human and sort of be alive and everything else. And then you see throughout the show that he's kind of that way anyway. Like, no matter what he tries to, put his finger on, this is what humanity is. It's like all the things he's searching for, all the things he's doing, the way he treats people, all of his actions. Like, he is as human can be, but he keeps saying, like, I got to look forward to that. And sort of that's what's happened with FCG, right? It's like you say, well, I don't have this. I'm just a machine. I'm just this being that was created by someone else. But like he acts as if he has he acts in a way that just is alive, right? So it's almost just, that's why I think the rest of the group was like, of course you do, and of course he did, right? So really interesting. So,
and it's one of those things where if it's something that you actually are really concerned about, then you probably are, because otherwise you wouldn't even care. It wouldn't even be a thought. You wouldn't care if you had a soul. You wouldn't care if you were human. You wouldn't care. The only reason why you are is because you can feel. You want something. A machine doesn't necessarily want something if they're not programmed to want it, so not programmed to seek it. So it's one of those things that the group has been trying to tell them this whole time. Like, we see it, we know you do. You just have to believe it yourself. And so it was funny because it was like, I'm a real boy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, it's funny.
I'm a real soul.
Well, and what's really interesting, right? Like this is one thing about D&D that's really kind of fun, but it's also, role-playing games in general. But like, we're talking about things that in our real world, we could debate for centuries, and people have debated for centuries, like what is soul, what is existence, what is consciousness and stuff. And those debates are still happening. What is good? What is evil? What does all that stuff mean? We could still talk about those stuff in like abstract terms and as a society, and we're still working on that. However, in the fantasy world of Dungeons and Dragons, evil and good are actual entities. They are things. They're tangible things. There are planes of existence. There are all of these things. There is law. There is chaos. There are these things that are like, it's like there is no, like the way we study mythology. It's like, no, those gods in that world are real. They're the one granting spells to their clerics. Like it's so what's interesting about it is that it not only took it from an abstract concept of like, what is FCG, blah, blah, blah. But like, no, we saw it. Like Pike saw it. So now we know for sure, right? Like it's not a guesstimate anymore. It's not like, a debate. It's like, this is true, which is really nice. You can do that in a game world, right? Like you can answer a question that's very metaphysical and go, no, this is what it is, because things are magic and things are, Anyway,
Right.
it's just cool to me that you can do that. So.
But it was kind of funny, though, because the whole time after that, Sam kept making references, to, well, now that I have a soul, and now that this soulful one will accompany you, it's like, it was
well,
so
and also,
funny.
He didn't want to die. Like, at that point, he's like,
Right.
no, Mom,
He's
my
like,
life has
no.
got something to like,
now
die.
now it has to mean something. Now I have to contemplate the meaning of life, like, how do you do this? It's so hard.
It's always been that way. Like, it's the same as 5 minutes ago. It's like, it was really funny.
You've been doing it every day.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of like their mission, right? Is to head, and she tells them, hey, you're going to have the same stuff that you already have. Orem, smart enough to think ahead, and asks for Vex to see, hey, do you have a magic sword I can use? My sword is great, but it's not magic, and we might need to be fighting some magic things.
Right.
And she loans him a sword, and smart. And then they start a ritual to kind of like, after a while, they end up starting the ritual to take him over there, right?
Yeah, and what's kind of cool about that, too, is, to kind of go back to, like, our theory that there's a possible phylactery, involved. One of the things that I thought was interesting that Pike mentioned was that the souls were not where souls normally are.
Yeah.
They're in a cold place. And they have to travel, their souls have to astrally or metaphysically travel to wherever those souls are to try and get Laudna's, like, wrench Laudna's soul back. So,
yeah,
big ritual, lots of weird components,
Yeah. And then they end up, all the light show happens. They start going through. They cross over into this other world, which seems to be sort of creating itself as they go. And you and I both, I think, called it before they actually figured it out while they were going. Like, as the trees start coming up and you hear the whispers of, she's a witch, and all this other stuff that are happening, you and I are both like, oh, they're going through the memories of Laudna, like when she was being chased around for all that time. And to be honest, like, us doing the research that we did for our last, like, special video that was about the phylactery really helped me kind of, like, put all that stuff together so that it was easier for me to see. Because had I not, like, read that stuff again or gone back to, read some of the theories about it, but also rewatched some of the clips and all those things, I probably wouldn't have put that together in that moment. But it was a really cool concept of, like, traveling through what she had been through, and then, there's this cottage, and there are all these people, and then there's a fire inside, and her shadow is there, and, all the things that are happening. And, good old Chetney strolls up, takes a look inside, and sees what's going on.
So I think the first thing that happens isn't like a fire catches, or we hear the whispers, and then we hear, like, some fire from the fireplace starts licking up.
Yeah, you're right. Because it was like they threw it was almost like as if the fire started because like if they were trying to burn her out or something. Yeah.
And then Laudna is sitting at the table. And what seems like the components for pate de Rolo, spread around.
Yeah.
And so, as the the whispers are getting louder and the fire starts, you can see, like, the figure of Laudna kind of startles, and then she turns. It's like she's flickering in and out with this black shadowy stuff, and then she disappears. So Chetney is trying to really, I think, cover all the bases. So he scoops up pate and all the little pieces in case the cabinet.
Would you say that Laudna ghosted him? No.
She did.
Sorry, everybody.
She ghosted them.
Sorry, everybody.
Yeah. So she kind of disappears. She disapparates, for a better word. And then, and so he scoops up all the little components of pate, puts them in his satchel, runs back out, and then all of a sudden you see these three shadows, that figure type things, like, and Matt described them as like shadow cloth almost, but they have shadows around them, and they're like cloths whipping around.
It was sort of like
that was really cool.
That were going around. Kind of reminded me, not that he, like, again, I never, everybody gets inspiration from different places, but kind of reminded me of, like, Dementor-ish. Like the way it was like moving around, and the cloak and the fabric and the shadow was sort of like that's what without the whole skeleton thing.
So that was interesting. And then of course, like you said, like fight ensues, and they're trying to figure out, like I think that the shadow things were kind of, they're kind of spread out, so they're not all clumped up, and there's 3 of them, and so they start fighting them, and they're doing okay. You could definitely tell they needed magic against them. So
well, and not only that, but like not unlike Dementors, they had a life drain that was happening. So like they were this necro life drain, so they were like able to pull the life energy and then regain some health themselves.
They had these weird mouths that as they got closer, you didn't see eyes and you didn't see a face, but you saw mouths that would like reach out, like shoot out and try to like dig into a character, like one of the people fighting them.
Dementors, I'm telling you, Dementors kiss. It was very similar to me. I mean, again,
it reminded me of like some alien stuff bursting out of somebody's body.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So that was pretty, and I was watching Travis's face the whole time, because how he gets about scary stuff, and I was like, oh, he's gonna freak out, and he was just like, oh, okay, all right. But yeah, I mean, so they end up, they start fighting these things, and they're not doing too terribly bad, but the life drain starts taking its toll on a few of them, and it knocks down their total HP. It was funny too, because you, in the middle of it, you're like, yeah, no, I love those guys. That's why I had them in our campaign, and you had one of the shadowy things reduced HP or gave a level of exhaustion or something, so it gave like extra, it might not have been super hard to kill, but it's lingering. The effects are going to linger for a while.
Oh, totally. So, and it did for our campaign too. Like,
yeah. And then the other thing that was kind of funny was Laura, the whole time, she's like, we still have to fight the Lila guys.
Yeah.
Don't use your spell slots. Like, please.
Another DM perspective thing. It's like, if I want to make sure that my boss battle, if I know I'm building to one, is meaningful and that it's not an easy cakewalk, then having an encounter like this before they get there, they have to really think about what they're doing, resource management, how are they going to like do stuff, but also, can they even rest in between now and the next place? They're in an unknown area. It's not like they can just pull over to an inn. Like they're not on the highway just stopping at the Holiday Inn. Like they've got to like figure out how do they manage what they've got. So I don't blame Laura for saying that.
Yeah. And it's not the real realm, so they don't know what could pop up. I mean, those shadows popped up out of the middle of nowhere, so however long you sit there, maybe more will come. You just don't it doesn't follow the regular laws of the universe, because they're in some astral projected dreamscape type soul area. So, and then also the fact that when the soul drain happened, the soul got dimmer of the person that it happened to. That's the part, and then it didn't like restore. That's the part that's a little scary. Like, okay, if that gets drained all the way, it's not good.
Are you getting back or not at all?
Yeah.
It's
so they finally. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, they finally defeated them, and were a little worse for wear, but it wasn't like super difficult. I think it was just spread out, and they had a couple of interesting mechanics, the bad guys. So
well, and also like they had this interesting thing as they finally finished this, where they were like, where do we go next? And they ended up searching and finding sort of a doorway and going down and entering into sort of this underground realm and traveling, and even that was unusual, because as they move forward, things are kind of changing. And I think it was Chetney that was in the front, and like as he kind of comes up and sees, it's like, oh no, I'm in a different forest and I can see a city ahead and like buildings and stuff, but he like it's like the gravity shifted, like he was coming up from the floor, even though he was down. It was just an interesting thing. So he was basically coming out of the ground as they go. But interesting thing there was, where did they end up? Like after coming out of that, but in this other alternate version, this other plane version of Whitestone,
Yes.
staring in the future, or staring in the distance, seeing the sun tree.
Yeah.
So if this it falls in lines with the memories and the things that she's been through, we're also seeing, I believe, a green pulsing energy, right, that came out. So this is now the moment, really, or they're nearing the moment where Laudna became a Hollow, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I think, do they enter up that way, or are they just kind of looking at this point? I can't remember if
they're mainly looking. That's kind of where he ended it, with them, staring at the sun tree, the green cast, light everywhere, and we'll pick up next week. I really am super interested to see how Matt does this. I really hope that they can watch stuff happening, like the rituals happening, or like I want to be able to get some more story, some more like some meat, like reveal some things to us on, like what exactly happened, what was the ritual, like how did it go down, and then how was Laudna not all the way dead? Her soul was still somewhere, because otherwise, if she was dead on the tree, there would have been, like nothing to mix with the necromantic like magic, and so it really, I'm hoping we'll get a few more answers, especially like our theory is still in the running, so nothing has debunked it
so far.
So,
our theory, my particular theory on this, because we haven't talked about it yet, so far, I think we are going to see that. I think we're going to see what happens when the body's hit with the blast from the ziggurat, and then I also think that the key to why, this is just my thought, the key to why she comes back. Hi, Romeo. I mean, maybe Romeo was hit with a ziggurat blast. I don't. And, oh, by the way, I can't say the word ziggurat followed by the word blast unless I put words in between, because otherwise I say it with an accent every time. Ziggurat blast. Ziggurat blast. I can't say blast after I say the word ziggurat. Ziggurat blast.
Interesting.
Oh, I did it.
You did it.
Yes.
Ziggurat blast.
Yes, you can do it perfect.
Ziggurat blast.
For me, every time I do it, ziggurat blast. I can't not say blast.
But I mean, we've had this discussion. I also, being from the South and a very, Southern family, my vowels are all the same. So
I tell you what, let's put a pin in that. Can you write something down with a pen, and let's put a pin in it?
They're the same thing. It's just context clues in the sentence.
So let me just ask this question. What do you use to stick something to a bulletin board?
A pen.
What do you write with?
A pen. You also put the pigs in the pen. Like, it's the same thing. It's
okay. Agree to disagree. I think that the reason that Laudna is going to be able to come back once the blast comes through is that she was already prepared.
I feel like Delilah's like the cockroach that survives the nuclear fallout, They cannot get rid of her.
No, they can't.
No matter what they do. And that's the whole thing with Percy. Percy's like, no, you will not bring her back. And they keep trying to make the point, she's been back. She's been back. You had no clue.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, they didn't know that she was back into the realm through Laudna. But again, to them, it's like, do we want to give her this foothold? Like, right now, she doesn't have any foothold if Laudna goes away. Right. So I can understand why he feels that way. It's hard. We'll see. I mean, we still don't know if they're going to be able to pull this off. If she does come back, we don't know what form she'll take. We don't know any of this stuff. We'll have to keep watching and find out.
And the thing is, having watched Four-Sided Dive, it's not that there's not a possibility at all. Marisha really, really wants to continue with Laudna, and to the point where she didn't want to even talk about making another character or production, trying to get together like the artwork for another character. And so I think with how strongly Marisha feels about it, Matt made a point of saying that he talks to everyone after the game to find out, what do they want to do? Do they really want to persistently try to bring this character back, or do they have things on deck to kind of move on to? And so up until now, everybody's just been like, nope, let's move to the next character. And Marisha's like, no, I really, really want, there's more for her. So he said that there's a possibility that she can come back, that it's not completely, out of the realm of doable. But I think it's not, he said it's not going to be easy. So,
and I also think she doesn't expect it to be Laudna's form to be the same necessarily. I think she's expecting, she wants to continue with Laudna, but it may change what version Laudna, version 3.0, I guess now of Laudna is going to be. So we'll see. Yeah. But I'm excited. I guess we will have to tune in this Thursday and find out more. Yeah. Luckily, they have a show this week, so we'll check it out. So
we're getting to some good stuff.
We are. It's. I have like we mentioned before, I have a renewed energy for this show now. So awesome. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody, and we will catch you here on Critical Cafe next time.
Thanks, guys.